Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer R. Farmer, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the interview that Katt Williams gave on the Club Shay Shay podcast. Now, I'm a public relations professional, and so when I watched the interview, I was watching it from the standpoint of what did Katt Williams do well and what enabled him to maintain the attention of an audience for close to 3 hours. The interview was 2 hours and 46 minutes, and as of this recording, January 10th, it has been seen more than 40 million times. That is phenomenal. And I should say that the interview was recorded on January 3rd. So within a week's time, more than 40 million people viewed the interview. I want to say that that's also somewhat of unheard of. For my purposes as a public relations person, I work with clients and colleagues, and I work with them around how to share their message, how to capture and maintain the attention of an audience, and how to deliver their message effortlessly. And while there are a lot of people who are watching this interview from multiple different standpoints, what I think about is what can we learn from this interview to help us give and deliver better interviews and become better spokespersons. So as I watched the interview, there were at least 7 things that I think he did exceptionally well, and I'll walk through those for you right now. But first, if you've not already, please subscribe and like this video. That will allow you and others to be aware whenever I post new content, which I'm trying to do with a little bit more frequency. So the first thing that I think that Katt Williams did well was he immediately captured the audience's attention. When I work with clients and colleagues, I emphasize the importance of getting to the point and getting to the point quickly. We cannot guarantee that people will stay with us throughout the duration of what we have to say. Even when we're writing, there's no guarantee that a person is going to read what we write from start to finish. And that's why it's very important for people who are giving interviews to immediately capture the audience's attention and then to maintain it. Now, this is difficult to do in an interview that's 15 minutes, let alone one that was close to 3 hours. But Williams did this beautifully. From the first seconds of his remarks until the end, it was difficult to turn away. Viewers also didn't have to wait for Williams to make a big point. Within the first couple of minutes, I would say the first 5 minutes, he made several points that had me and others thinking, okay, wow, I didn't know this, or this is interesting. So he delivered quickly and he delivered efficiently. The second thing that I think he did well is he offered context. I tell my clients and also, my friends and partners that the best interviewers tell the host and the audience something that they don't know. They also offer context, and they offer context that the audience members didn't know they needed. When we offer context, a masterful spokesperson gives the audience a window into the spokesperson's thinking, and it allows viewers and listeners to locate themselves in the person's story. Also, when you offer context, you allow the audience to feel smarter or to feel like they know a little bit more than what they did before the start of the conversation or the start of the interview. From Katt's discussion around leaving home at just 13 years old, to his explanation around how he got into comedy, to detailing being homeless while filming Friday, we learned so much about Katt Williams, the person, as well as Katt Williams, the comedian. And I think that was just brilliant how he wove his story into the conversation. That leads me to my next point. The third thing that I think that Katt did very well is he demonstrated a level of vulnerability. It takes a lot of courage to admit publicly that you were wronged or that you feel that you were wronged. It takes internal fortitude to acknowledge your struggles, especially in Hollywood and in a culture that I think penalizes authenticity. In one interview, fans and detractors alike learned about Williams leaving home, again at just 13 years old. And when you hear that, for a lot of us, we think, gosh, how would I have made it? How would I have survived? We learned about the lessons that he learned very early in his journey, talking to people who were also homeless, learning how they got there, right? So this was obviously someone who from his youth was inquisitive, was curious, and he engaged in the people who he met. We also learned about his tumor diagnosis. We learned about, his son picking up his necklace and then accidentally dropping it on his mouth and the damage that that caused. And we learned about his struggle to care for himself. As he was talking about his early life experience, what I kept thinking is resilience. This is someone who was very resilient even from a young age. And it's like, okay, how do we bottle that up and share that for the benefit of others? He allowed viewers to learn more about who he was, as well as his journey to becoming Katt Williams and his overall outlook on life. So there was a level of vulnerability that didn't feel like, oh my gosh, this person is disclosing too much, but it was a level of vulnerability that allowed viewers to step into his story and to learn more. The fourth thing that I think he did very well, and I don't even know if he was intending to do this, but he presented himself as a complex figure who deserved another look. I remember some of the rumors that were circulating around Katt. I remember some of the arrest, and whenever he was arrested and I heard about it, I would say a prayer for him. Or whenever there was a negative article, I would say a prayer for him, because to me, it always seemed like at his core, he was a good person. So when I heard about these different things, never met him, don't know him, but I always said a prayer for him. And, hearing his story, again, I think it helped viewers to see him as a complex figure who deserved another look. The fact that his interview broke the internet also confirms that. He demonstrated courage, authenticity, vulnerability, and he also demonstrated that he is a complex figure who doesn't fit neatly in any one box. He curses relentlessly. He comedically destroys his opponents. He walks to the beat of his drum. But he also has a moral center and a connection to God. I mean, that was very clear and very apparent. Even if how he showcases that connection to God is different from others, you could still tell that he's thinking about what would God think in some of the things that he does. When he explained that he wanted to be God's friend, I thought to myself, how many people in Hollywood do we hear say something like that? He also dispelled the myth of race as a dividing line, noting instead that it was God's side and the other side. Again, I don't hear many celebrities talk like that. He talked about the importance of bringing other people along and helping comedians who were struggling. So from watching that interview, what I took away from it is, okay, this is not someone who you could put in one box or another. This person is complex and they're unique. And again, I think that piece of sharing this part of himself, I'm sure that to viewers, it was interesting, it was intriguing, and also probably was one of the things that caused many people to keep listening. The other thing, or the fifth point, is it seemed to me that he brought his full self to the interview. Sometimes when people are given an opportunity to do an interview or to share their message, especially on a large platform, there is a temptation to think that you have to change who you are, that who you are is somehow or won't be accepted. And I always tell clients, like, to be yourself, bring your full self to the interview. And you could tell that Katt Williams brought himself to the interview. He didn't turn into someone else. He was still a comedian. He was still funny. In fact, at points, I felt like he was giving a show, right? But he was the same Katt Williams that his fans have long loved and adored. While he had a more serious tone at times, the interview for me was a reminder that spokespeople should bring their full selves to the interview. Now, certainly there are spaces where, some things are more appropriate than others, and wisdom is knowing where you can say certain things and how you might say it. But I felt like, okay, I didn't feel like I was listening to someone who was different from Katt Williams, the brand. It felt very much on brand for him, and yet I wanted to keep listening. The sixth thing that I thought was interesting and that probably encouraged people to keep listening is you could tell that he has lived a life that's been characterized by kindness. If what he was saying was true, and I have no reason to believe that it was not. But what I learned is that on multiple occasions, he has gone out of his way to demonstrate that his career is not just about himself, but about bringing other people along, and that his life is not just in service of himself, but about helping others. From adopting 7 kids to giving money to comedians who were struggling, he is clearly someone who is selfless. The fact that he would give money to comedians, even though they were not set to be paid, that speaks volumes. And I just don't know that many people do that in this day and age. You just don't hear about that kind of thing. The fact that, he talked about how he tithes. And one of the things that he said is that when he goes to a city, he may make $100,000 or more, and he will gift 10% of what he makes. I thought that was interesting because, again, I feel like we live in a society where it's me, 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 me. And it's, everything that I've accumulated, it's just for me. And so I could tell that there was a level of kindness, and I just feel like that's rare in a world that seems like everyone is out for themselves. The 7th and final thing that I think he did very well, or at least the final thing that I'll say for this recording, is that he demonstrated, or he displayed, courage. It takes a lot of courage and strength to share one's truth publicly. It takes a lot of courage to name the people who you feel have wronged you. It takes strength of character to speak your truth, and also to do that on a public platform. This is not like calling up a friend and telling them what you know, but I mean, you get on a public platform and you speak your truth. And I just feel like that is rare, and it also is incredibly courageous. Now, certainly if I were on his PR team, I would have been incredibly nervous listening to him name the various people, not because that act in itself scares me, but because I know that as soon as you name someone publicly, then they're going to come back and say something, and I would just worry about the subsequent attacks that might follow. But that's neither here nor there. The fact is, I think that he displayed a tremendous amount of courage, and again, I don't think that we see courage very often in this day and age. I think that his fans will no doubt appreciate his boldness and his willingness to share his truth. So again, when I listened to it from a PR perspective, really thinking about, okay, well, what was it that made him a phenomenal spokesperson during this segment? And what was it that inspired people to listen? Now, I can't say that everyone who listened for the entire, 2 hours and 46 minutes, but I will say that, a lot of people tuned in, and I bet a lot of people did. I know for myself, I listened to the interview from start to finish, but then there were also different segments that I went back and I listened to again because I wanted to understand, and I wanted to hear more. So that's my perspective. And for those of you who find yourself in a position of needing to do interviews, I always recommend that you think about and you pay attention to people who give good interviews, and see what you can borrow and what you can learn and what feels good for you and your brand. Take care.